Good evening and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host George Binns and our special guest Senator Joan Lovely from Salem. But before we go into our questions with Senator Lovely, I have a little book I want to show you. And this book, my son just published it. It's available on Amazon, called The Worst President in American History. I think you know who he's talking about. You could probably tell by the picture, but it is available on Amazon, and I'm doing a little self-serving by showing you this book now. It is available as we speak. And enough of that. Now, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And Senator Lovely, I was watching TV the other day, and I got a little cranky because I was watching Elliot from Jordan's Furniture tell me there's not going to be a tax holiday this year. I know my wife and I have been looking forward to it. So can you tell us why?
So I would have voted for a tax holiday this year. I vote for it every summer when we're doing it right around this time of the year. I think it's great for the consumer. It's great for businesses. Just in the paper the other day, there was an article, Douglas Appliance in Danvers, that happens to be family. And so I always support it. It didn't get put in front of the legislature for a vote this year. It was a decision made through leadership in the House and the Senate not to put it in front of us for a vote. I would have voted in favor. There's a budget shortfall when the governor put out his budget in January, and through the 6-month period leading up to the House did the budget and then Senate, there was a $750 million shortfall. And so they decided to take the tax holiday off the table this year, and I'm upset about it. I think that that about $26 million that consumers save, I think we could have given that to them. I'd be willing to bet that if George and I sat in front of that budget and give us a half hour, we could save plenty of money, such as the waste in EBT cards and the waste in money spent on illegal citizens in Massachusetts, instead of taking care of our regular citizens. I'm sure that we could find a way to. Well, we have a good Republican governor in the corner office, and a governor that I agree with and work well with, and he and his administration are taking, a serious look at the budget and have made a lot of different cuts, and have really tightened up EBT and to make sure that undocumented people are not getting the benefits, because if you're undocumented, you can't get benefits. You're not supposed to get benefits. So I'm working very closely with this administration to make sure we tighten that up. But I would welcome your red pen and your help. I'm on Senate Ways and Means now, learning a lot about the budget process. Good.
This issue about the tax holiday is just a piece of the action that you mentioned, the $750 million. Recently, they had a override vote on some of it, and last I heard it was about $100 million got put back. One of the issues for Beverly was the money that was cut out the first time round for work on the carriage house. Right. And I guess the issue now is, where does that stand? So that is going to come up for a vote this weekend. Actually, the legislature will be in on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to put in about 12-hour sessions each day to finish up the formal session of our two-year session. And we anticipate that override is going to come back to us. It'll be voted in the House first, so Representative Parasella will vote to override that and restore it, and then I'll do it the same on the Senate side. So that $100,000 will go back into the budget. I also, in an economic development bill, with the assistance of Rep. Parasella, put in a $250,000 earmark towards the carriage house because of the fire. So that's in conference committee right now, and we're anticipating that's going to stick, but we are working hard to get that to stick. So one thing about these earmarks, though, especially in the budget, I want to just gently warn people that if we continue to have a budget shortfall, that the governor can do what they call a 9C cut. That is a governor power only, and he can make mid-year cuts. So we're hoping that our revenues will stay steady. We'll grow them a little bit so that he's not going to have to do that. So even though we're going to restore that into the budget by overriding his veto,
I still cautiously kind of tell people, not yet. We want to make sure we can get through.
Don't spend it yet.
Don't spend it yet, but we're very hopeful that it's going to stick and get the 100,000, then that extra 250 and get the carriage
Will the
house
250
repaired.
make it into this budget, or is that into next year's?
It's an economic development bill
Yeah.
that I had it inserted into. It's because it's economic development, the carriage house, right?
Yeah.
It's weddings and events, and it generates
Yeah.
money. So separate from the budget. Yeah. So that will stick.
Well, where does the money come from to support an economic bill like that?
So an economic, so a lot of it is a bond bill. So it's a permission to bond, but it's not authorization. So we actually, in bond bills, we put we put the request into a bond bill, but then we have to go to the governor and say, will you authorize the bond?
Okay.
So it's the first step in the step of many steps, but a necessary step. If it's not there, there's no chance of getting it.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people like me get confused. And exactly how do you make this happen? And it sounds easy to say, well, we'll just write it into the budget, or we'll put an earmark in there. And
So earmarks are local projects that we can actually say, okay, we want this in the budget for this local project.
Yeah.
As long as the revenues meet their projections, we'll see that money.
okay, yeah.
Exactly.
I assume there's priorities. Some things you got to pay, and
There are our fixed costs like health care
Yeah.
and things like that, very expensive, but those are fixed costs, salaries and pension. Pension's a very big discussion we have to keep, discussing, very expensive. We need, again, the former governor, this governor, making the appropriate types of adjustments so that new hires coming in, payment's going to be higher, contributions higher, things like that.
yeah, there was an interesting email I got over the weekend talking about Chicago and Cook County, and they got a really big surprise in their property tax bills because they're starting to have to pay off the pensions that they've been promised, and unfunded liabilities is getting to be a universal problem. And one of the scary parts of the email is they listed the 4 states that are in the worst shape, and it starts with Connecticut, Illinois, I think Kentucky, and I forget what the 4th one is. And they said, oh, by the way, Massachusetts is 5th on the list.
Mm.
So this is an ongoing problem, I think, that every city, town, and state is struggling with. So that's
They are, and there's a mandate to have met that unfunded liability. I think it's in the 2040-ish range. I don't know that the communities will meet it.
Yeah.
I know some communities are being very aggressive about plugging that hole, and others don't have that ability.
Yeah.
But we're going to continue to work and figure it out.
yeah, that's a big problem.
Speaking of mandates and fitting into budgets, you and your family make X number of dollars. You have to live within your budget.
Right,
Same with me, same with George.
right.
Why doesn't the state? Because, see, it's so easy and you know why people are so anti-government right now. I mean, that's why we have Donald Trump as the Republican, because they're so anti-government.
Bernie Sanders did so
Bernie
well.
Sanders.
Right.
Why can't you learn to spend within your means? I mean, it's real simple. We have to do it. Now,
Well, I thought by the state regulations, you have to have a balanced budget.
We do. The state has to pass a balanced budget, and that's why Governor Baker and the legislature had to cut $750 million before we even passed the budget,
Yeah.
because it wasn't balanced. So, and that's why, sometimes we'll do a supplemental budget, maybe twice a year, where some accounts were left very short. And they can't meet their obligations.
Yeah.
One is the sheriff's departments. The sheriff's departments are always running behind because of the number of people that are cycling in and out of the jails. It's very expensive to run. We're looking at other ways to try to fix that, because we also know that there's a lot of substance abuse, steer those people into treatment. Mental health issues that are putting people in jail, steer those people into treatment and not into the criminal justice system. So
One of the ones I always remember from way back was, I grew up in Providence, and this is back 50 years ago. They would always have an article in the Providence Journal that, it's cheaper to put the kids up the people in jail up at the Biltmore Hotel and send them to Brown University than it is to keep them in. Jails are terribly expensive.
They're expensive, they
Yeah.
are. So.
Well, you know, you talk about the pensions and how expensive the pensions are. Why is it that John Q. Citizen has to work till 65, 66, 67? The retirement age keeps on going up for John Q. Citizen, but not for state employees. They can retire after, say, 20 years, get a pension, get another job, get another pension. Our mayor is going to get 3 different pensions from the state because he was a teacher in Ipswich, he was a state representative for 10 years, and now he's the mayor. That's 3 different pensions.
Well, actually, it'll be one pension because the pensions followed him and it went into the next system where he is. So he'll get one pension, although all his numbers of years count towards his pension. You know, so the pension, you know, your benefits depend on age and years of service. Yeah. You have to work a pretty long time and get to a certain age to get a decent pension, and depending on what you did, actually. Yeah. We don't make a lot of money in the legislature, so I'm not banking. But also, I mean, I paid into Social Security because I worked another job before I went to the Senate. But there's a lot of people that haven't. We don't pay Social Security, so we don't get. If you don't pay in, you don't get Social Security either. Maybe we need to be able to looking at that system. You know, or a combination. There's got to be a way to fix this. I don't know what the answer is, I'll be honest with you, but I'm more than willing to roll up my sleeves and help figure it out.
That gets to be one of the fundamental problems with the layers of government, that every layer has got their own way of doing business. And when you try to get crosswise on the layers, things don't come out even. And like we were talking a minute ago about the balancing the budget. The city has to balance the budget. The state has to balance the budget. Right. The federal government doesn't.
Right.
And that is a big problem. So I think a lot of the confusion that people have is, well, how can they run up these tremendous bills? Well, they're thinking about different systems, implying that, well, what works over here must be what they're doing over there. And it ain't the way it works.
No, that's why the federal government runs deficit in the trillions.
Yeah.
You know, that has to be paid back. So let's not get going about the federal government.
Yeah, that'll get me wound up. You think he
Yeah.
gets cranky? That winds me up. But anyway, one of the other bills that's up for grabs right now is this paid leave.
Yep, family medical paid leave.
Yeah, and I noticed in the paper there was an article that the representative from Gloucester, Bruce Tarr, put a hold on it.
He did.
How is that going to work out, do you think?
So we took it up on Saturday. The Senate and the House were in session on Saturday, and the Senate took it up. And he did ask that it's a technical situation where he wants the bill and the amendments to be printed in the Journal. Yeah. So that automatically stays until this weekend. To be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen this weekend, whether we will take it up or we will not. I also will tell you that I have a lot of respect for the minority leader. I think he does a great job, and I'm a moderate Democrat, so I tend to vote with my Republican colleagues a fair amount of the time. And so I'm curious to see whether we will or we will not take up that bill. I'm not sure that the support will be there, but today's Tuesday. I don't know when this airs, and we're in session on Saturday. I can't tell you what's going to happen right now.
Yeah. Well, the issue, I think, comes down to one of, in a lot of cases, like the unfunded liabilities, things are promised and money isn't put aside to pay for it.
Right.
This is a kind of an issue where it sounds like a good idea.
Right.
That people who have responsibilities for family members should get some sort of compensation or some recognition that they got to do some other things and they can't always be doing the job that's paying the bills. That puts the onus on the business.
Right.
So we end up with a situation that I think a lot of people struggle with. The government comes along and says, you're running this business, you got to do it this way, and it's going to cost you money. Your chief of staff put a letter in the Salem News today talking about affordable housing. It's a similar kind of issue. How do we end up with a balance someplace that, yeah, we're going to get some things done may be done by people who are more effective at doing it, but we're not going to break the bank or put them out of business doing
So
it.
we're going to have to carve out, so if this bill goes forward, and by the way, if the bill passes on the Senate side, we've already gotten the signal that the House isn't interested in taking up the bill this session. So the Senate may take a stand on it, but it's not going to go anywhere. So, but we have to take a look at maybe it's based on size of business. Maybe larger businesses maybe have more of an affordability to do this. Maybe they don't, but I know for small businesses, this could be a make or break. And I know there's several amendments that have been filed about carving out small businesses, that there would be an exception. But again, remains to be seen. I think we're probably going to, I see this as a refile next year, and I think we need to get a lot of people to the table and have some really robust discussion about it.
How many senators and state reps are there that are in business, that understand business? Because the impression that a lot
I'm
of
one
people...
of them. I have a law firm. It's a very small business.
Well, because I was going to talk about lawyers.
Okay, be
I'm
nice.
sorry to hear that,
Be
by the
nice.
way. You have my sympathy.
Be nice.
Lawyers in general,
Yep.
and I won't be specific,
Okay.
but lawyers in general have no idea how to run a business, don't know what a business is, yet they're creating laws, for instance, tax classification. Tax classification hurts small business. A $15 minimum wage is going to hurt small business. Just as a for instance, let me ask you a question. How much does a $15 an hour wage cost the employer?
Costs them more than a $12 an hour wage. So
But-
here in Mass, we went from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. There is a provision to do the $15 per hour wage. I would actually like to see the federal minimum wage, match the state. Federal is what? Is it $7?
$7.62.
Right. Thank you. Nobody can live on that.
No.
No,
They just
but
can't live on that.
couple of things. Number one, minimum wage isn't for people to live on. It's a starting wage, but a $15 minimum wage costs an employer very close to $30 an hour, because Social Security, workman's comp, and all the different taxes. So when you talk about a $15 minimum wage, you're talking about $30 to the employer. How many small businesses, or how many hamburgers do you have to sell to make, that's the problem. You're hurting small business.
I would agree with small businesses, but the Walmarts and these large big box stores can afford it. They absolutely can afford it.
The classic one is Costco compared to, say, Target.
Right.
Costco employees, I think, are making something like $22 an hour.
Yeah. Because they
Whereas
pay them.
They pay
That's a
them.
living wage.
Yeah.
And
And I
something
mean,
you can
this,
live
I
on.
think, comes down to the fundamental issue of when I was getting ready to go to college, I worked in a local amusement park. Got 90 cents an hour. It was a little bit more than minimum wage at the time. There was no intention I was going to raise a family on that job.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the economy has shifted such that for a lot of people, flipping burgers for McDonald's is the only job they can get. And the economy isn't there to provide them with the next step, so you can get up to 25, 35, 40 bucks an hour,
Right.
where you can start with a family. And I keep coming back to, I got to admit, Rahm Emanuel had it right. It's the economy, stupid. And if we don't get the economy going, there's no way you can boost the salaries.
You know where we have a shortage in our workforce is in manufacturing here in Massachusetts. Manufacturing, there's jobs are there, people aren't trained to go into those manufacturing jobs. So that's what we need to be doing, is training people to go into these good paying jobs that pay more than minimum wage, and people can live on that wage.
Now you hit one of my hot buttons.
Okay.
That we used to have a trade school in Beverly.
I don't know. I graduated from this high school.
Yeah.
I remember the trade school.
And
Patton.
Patton,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And I spent 1 year, I was president of the board even, so I remember it very well. We don't have one anymore. if the kids want to get some hands-on kind of learning experience, and there are a lot of people around like me that do better hands-on than with the books, you got to apply for a regional tech.
Yep,
Well, there's a limited number of slots
that's
available.
right.
And one of the things
Very
that the
popular
senior
school.
center does is have a breakfast with seniors kind of thing. We get to talk to the high school seniors. And I met two young ladies during this tour who wanted to be veterinarians. Why don't you go to Essex Tech and find out what it's going to be like and get some real hands-on experience? You may not like the job, or you may say, hey, this is the one for me. And they didn't go. Why? Well, one of the young ladies said, I didn't want to leave my friends. The other one said, I didn't know I could go to Essex Tech and go to college from there.
Oh, wow.
So there's
Boy,
the
message
issue
isn't there.
yeah, it's get the kids ready. And one of my favorite stories is out of Seattle. A young lady was an immigrant. She graduated from high school, couldn't get a job. And that's all she has, a high school education. She never in her life used a hand drill. Had no idea what one was. And she went to one of these post-high school, trade school kind of things. She's now a supervisor on the line at Boeing.
Really? Wow.
And there's enough of these
Yep.
stories around. And I think this is where we need, well, put it back in your shop, that we need more direction, I think, at the state level that says, hey guys, you got to have a comprehensive high school. You got to start at the middle school level and start teaching them life skills. One of the books I read recently is saying kids don't know how to sew a button on. They don't know how to change a tire. If you don't have these skills,
When we had
Right.
when we had the public hearing in Beverly about the school, the Essex Tech School,
Yes.
I was one of the people that said we shouldn't do it, that we should have one here. With the cost of education today, first of all, not everybody should go to college. We need plumbers, we need
Absolutely.
electricians,
Those are good
we
jobs.
need woodworkers. They're making good money.
Absolutely.
And look at the dropout rate in colleges, because some kids
And
aren't
student
designed.
debt.
Right, and student debt.
Yep.
oh, geez,
So
yeah.
we really do need more trade schools and more charter schools.
Yep. I'm a charter school proponent.
Yeah.
I think it's choice for parents. Although the original avenue for kids, for the charter schools, was really the poorest of the poor, the struggling children were going to the charter school. It's flipped now. It's really become more of an elite school, or at least some of the charters that I've toured, that they're more, that the children that aren't doing as well academically or maybe have an IEP, some type of ed plan, are not doing well in the charters, so they go back to the public schools. We need to change that dynamic. We need to go back to our original roots of why we created charter schools, for those struggling students that need that extra help and that extra instruction.
Well, I know there's a waiting list to get into almost every charter school
There is.
that's non-union.
That's right.
Okay?
Yep.
And there's a reason for that too. I've toured some charter schools, and I have to tell you, the kids are phenomenal.
They're phenomenal.
You get a wide variety of kids. It's not just for the elite, but
No, I don't mean from elite. What I meant, and that probably was the wrong word. The strongest academic students are there, and really what we need are the struggling students need to be there as well.
well, it's done by lottery.
Well, the other half of the game too is everybody needs to get the best possible education they
Yes.
can handle,
We do.
no matter whether they're going to a charter school or to a public school.
Absolutely.
And I think this is where the system is trying to teach to the middle, and both ends are not challenged enough.
And so not every student has the same abilities,
Right.
right?
Oh,
they're,
yeah.
they're just not born with the same abilities, but students can achieve at the highest that they can achieve, and we should be teaching every student, individual student, to the best of their abilities that they can achieve. And if that means in charter schools, mixing it up so that all level of student can be there. I think we need to do that.
Well, one of the things that impressed me about the concept of the charter school is that there's no excuses.
That's true.
Right.
You do it. or-
Lots of parents' involvement too.
Right.
That makes a difference too.
It does.
And I think that is something that most people don't really tune into, that if the parents are behind the kid, he, she are going to do well.
It's true.
And there's a book out, Tiger Moms, that
Okay.
gets into the issue of how much the parents drive them, and that gets an overdone thing in some cases. But one of the ones that surprised me, they had a statistic on who's making the best amount pay. Asian males out-earn white males by 5%.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
there's an awful lot of this parent involvement that
Right.
makes
Right.
Yeah.
an awful lot of difference.
Right.
It
We got
does.
time for one more question, and I'm going to take it.
Okay.
Okay.
And that is pilot programs. One of the things, you look at Beverly, we've got Endicott College, we've got Shore Country Day, we've got the Waring School, paying no taxes. And we know Endicott has an awful lot of pretty good property. Boston, it's got to be half the city is colleges. And that puts a tremendous burden on the taxpayer. Now, we do have some pilot programs,
Right.
but they're pretty weak. And we need legislation to say to the schools, if your valuation is $400 million, probably similar to what Endicott is, you got to give us more than $100,000 worth of services. Can that be done in the state?
You know, it's usually done at the local level. The mayor or the selectmen will negotiate directly with, so I'm a little more familiar in Salem. I know Mayor Driscoll negotiates with Salem State, also with the hospital, the North Shore Medical Center, to try to come up with something that, isn't the same. It probably isn't comparable, whether it's a payment, direct payment, or whether it's a silent, which is a services in lieu of taxes, to try to come up with something that is fair. But it is difficult to watch, colleges and universities grow and kind of gobble up more tax-producing property, and then that's off the tax rolls. So I think it's something that needs to be discussed, and it's not just happening in my district. I
It's all over the
talked to colleagues about it,
Well,
and
it's a
how to
trade-off.
make that. Yeah, I know
The
there was.
trade-off between getting some more muscle behind the request for a pilot,
Yeah.
which we could get from the state, but at the same time, as you pointed out before we even started the show, yeah, you can force them to make some sort of payment. They're just going to jack up the fees.
Well, that's the whole thing.
It keeps going around.
See, that's like
Tuition.
the state jacking up the taxes when they need money.
So tuition is this big, and fees are now this big, and and then you pass it on to students. They have to pay it. Most are taking out school loans. I just feel for this future generation, my 20-somethings included, and I have a student loan from my law school when I went to law school. So it's expensive, 6 to 8%.
Yeah.
Don't get me going on student loans. I think it's just
Come back,
criminal.
we'll do it again.
We'll do it again. I've
do
talked
it.
to Senator Warren about it, and she's a champion about it. She's, one out of hundreds, up on Capitol Hill. But we've got to get that in control, because this next generation, they're not going to be able to buy homes. They're not going to be able to plan for retirement. They're not going to be able to raise families. What are we doing to our future?
And that's a
Numbers- the
nice
number-
way to end the show.
The number that
Sorry,
sticks
George.
with me, though, is I could earn enough money in the summertime to pay half a tuition when I was going to college.
Right,
The jobs aren't there to come to that level.
No.
The tuitions aren't at that level anymore.
right.
I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. Lot of topics. You're lucky you're not here for an hour. But we'd love to have you come back, because
I'd love to. Thank
you know,
you.
we have a lot more questions.
Great.
People need to know the answers and see
Absolutely.
what the state legislature is doing for us. So,
Thank you for the opportunity to address your viewers.
all right, thank you for coming. And if you've got any questions for Senator Lovely, send us an email. Excuse me, send us an email, and we will forward them to her. Thanks for watching.